Yeah, welcome to team games, where it's a challenge to get 2 people to do what's meant to happen, let alone 6. But we are finally underway. That is right. First team tournament on the Sultanate Ascend. We've got Team Kings tournament, a $500 3v3 tournament coming your way. I'm, of course, KP, and joining me on the mic for this wonderful occasion is the man who actually kicked it off. I gave him the credit early on. When you look at the beginnings of AoE4 and where team tournaments came in, it's fair to say Lytical was the first one to stick a big prize pool in there, so it only felt right to have him on the mic to open this wonderful occasion.
Hello, hello. I want to say I was very creative with that tournament, but let's just be honest. At that time, it wasn't rocket science to just say, hey, instead of having a 1v1 tournament, let's have a team game event. But yeah, it's always a delight to watch these team game events. They're just so different from the 1v1s. I honestly love the chaotic late games, all these massive battles with hundreds of soldiers. I think it's a very fun experience to look at.
Especially when you kind of get these type of maps, right? Like Gorge, I think this is a lesson for the devs to take forward. It's like, if there's any map you look at and go, bam, this is how we make team maps. Gorge is the one. You have this cool strategic layer that we're already seeing utilized on both sides. You know, we mentioned the idea of whether the Chinese player would be the safe player or the aggro player. Well, Baotun's been put on the front line, so we could be seeing some sort of aggressive play. But we should quickly intro the players, because we have actually got, I believe it's an CIS team here. Deniska, Tiger, and Yellow. Some people might notice the name Tiger. He's usually seen like the top 200. He's quite high ranked on the team ladder. On the other side, Baltoon definitely needs no introduction, and the other two, actually, Lytical, they've been showing up quite a bit in 1v1 tournaments as well recently.
Yeah, we have Baltoon, Maria, and Nugify on the other side. Now, we've been looking at the civilizations for a different game prior to this one because we had to change games. So we haven't had the chance to actually discuss the civilizations for this matchup. We have English, Malians, and French on one side. Japanese making an appearance early on here for Nugify, supported by Chinese and English.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because someone I mentioned with this map is you'd think you'd put the boom player at the back, but you actually don't. You put the mobility player at the back, which is funny because Maria's on English. But like typically the logic here is the safest place is in the center where you can protect them easily. And also that means when they boom, if they're an infantry base here, for example, they get their army in quicker. So I think what we're seeing here is Nugify is going to take the role of the boomer. Because right now, if you ask any high-ranked players, it's very clear what you do with the Japanese. They are kind of one-dimensional as a piece of paper. They do one thing well, and that's rushing castle age.
And now one thing I want to highlight here when it comes to the map spawn is that each of the 2 players in the front, or, well, the front player and the one in the middle, they spawn with a small forest. And those 2 forests are connected for Baltoon's team. So their northern flank is actually very well protected as a consequence.
The other cool thing here is like the gold vein. You know, this is something that the Japanese need a lot of, and he's going to have options between him. I actually kind of like that element for the mid game where you've got China and you've got England. When England gets late game, they provide their own gold. They don't need too much in the mid game. And China very much straight away has their own way of generating gold outside of gathering actively. That's pretty important considering that Japan, out of all the civs in the game, they have to be like, what, top 4, top 5 for gold consumption.
Oh yeah, they're going to be using up a lot of gold, but for the time being, Maria and Nagify will actually utilize the same large gold vein in the middle. Look at that. They want to make sure that they do not get cut off from this gold mine. There's going to be a defensive tower even placed.
Yeah, pretty low-cost investment for the Japanese, right, due to the fact they generate stone when they gather gold. And we have to remember on this map, when you do 3v3 format, you only get 2 gold veins, you get 8Ks, so you're always kind of sharing some way or the other. So, you know, make sure you understand who you're sharing with quickly when you get in these games, folks. Otherwise, these are the type of things that break relationships.
That Barbican is going to be positioned very defensively, and we have a range opening here for Tiger, so he's going to play a little aggro here, probably just poke around, see what he can do, but that Barbican is going to slow his advance down quite a bit.
And TC's the target for Baltoon. I wasn't expecting this out of the forward player, but kind of surprising, considering he's going to be the player under pressure here. I guess the natural thing with the Chinese, they can play a very tight TC, right? So it's kind of hard to dive and immediately punish them.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You're also going to have some longbows coming in here early from Maria, so you're going to have some map control or some presence on the map. It shouldn't amount too much, though, because you're likely going to be facing javelin throwers early here from the Malian player, plus some longbows as well from Blue. So I feel like we're going to have a lot of aggressiveness being played around with here for Blue's team, Deniska, Tiger, and Yellow. French Knights, I expect them to appear shortly. And then, of course, you do have the longbows and the javelin throwers already on their way.
Now, what's very interesting about this comp is the fact that, despite the fact it's a council build, they put Marie at the back. I think that's
That's a ram.
because of the tree lines, right? Like, the tree line situation is if you had the longbow player, which you'd think would be good on the front line, their wood gets blocked out straight away. But if you look at Maria's base, safest wood on the map, which is why I think they chose to put Baltian on the front line instead.
It's also the largest wood line that you can utilize. In the meantime, as you see, his longbows, they will not stand and fight against all those javelin throwers and longbows, but at least he spotted that battering ram being built. Scout barely gets away. Knights are coming. I feel like right now we're looking at 3 players all playing very aggressively on one side. And when you look at Baltoon's team, they're focusing a lot more on their economy. Not much of an army coming out of Nugify or Baltoon right now.
Yeah, Baltoon is focused on that second TC after the defenses, and Nugify is about ready to pull the trigger. 1,000 food, 500 gold in the bank. We are looking at Fast Castle. Against the comp he's facing, it's pretty cut and dry. Mount Samurai here makes so much sense. You've got 2 range components and knights. And Lidicor, I've watched a lot of French versus Japanese. You think it doesn't exist, it happens occasionally. And funnily enough, the Japanese can annihilate that matchup simply by spamming their knights into the enemies.
I think one key thing to look at is that once the French knights are gone, there's nothing from Deniskaya or Tiger that can stop those mounted samurai. Longbows and javelin throwers will die very quickly to those. So I think this ramp push needs to do a lot of damage here. I think it will eventually stall out. The question is how much damage you can do before those mounted samurai appear.
That's not looking like a lot. You know, they're queuing up these rams. You've got the fortified outpost on the front side. The reality is there's quite a lot of longbows to kind of de-push this as well. And on top of that, we are now seeing horsemen spammed out by the Chinese.
Yeah, it's only a handful of horsemen, but you can supervise that stable. And you see he's got a lot of villagers on food, so he's going to be up to like 10 horsemen very, very quickly. He also has a fortified outpost. In fact, he has opted to fortify the outpost first. Only after that is he going for the gun emplacements on it. So he's going to have a nice and strong position here. He's facing 3 battering rams, but Tiger didn't have a lot of javelin throwers, so it took some time for him to build up those ram numbers. And Nugify is already in castle.
And now the flood will begin. Remember, the Yushiro are tripling the production rate. These Mount Samurai come out fast, and that means someone's going to have to compensate. They need to get some Donzos out. I think that should actually genuinely be the role of Tiger. Instead, Tiger's getting a bit greedy. He's starting to add in those ranches.
Yeah, that's a problem. I feel like when all 3 of you commit to so much in terms of aggression and in terms of investment into that aggression, you can't just slow down and start booming. Like, you gotta go for this, because if this push stalls out, you're gonna be in big trouble. Tower's gonna go down quickly, though. Longbows are also buffed by a tower over here just by the town center of Baltoon, so there is a lot of firepower advantage here as well, because you don't have that buff on Deniskaya's longbows.
It's so bad what they're trying to do here, though. They're trying to ram down the primary TC. It has so much effective HP to it, and this is just buying critical time for Orange to scale up. Meanwhile, no one on the other team is going towards Castle Age, right? They are hard locked to the feudal. So if this lets out, if this fizzles out, you can pretty much just call GG from here.
The thing is that longbows can't get close enough to snipe villagers repairing this TC. You can easily repair this town center from the other side without taking any damage on the villagers.
Now Samurai count now, up to 3. Rams are being addressed quickly, and the horseman spam is big. Knights have to commit to the fight. They can't back away from this. And the Lombos, there's another one just start targeting down the javelins. Another sick detail here. Maria did prioritize the blacksmith upgrades. Big mistake made by Tiger, though. He got the undermesh, but no additional damage coming out. And now the swarm bleeds through. Horsemen block on the retreat. Man Samurai to clear up the knights behind them. And we are looking at what should be the beginning of a snowball.
And now this is ugly for the team on the right side. They are suddenly facing a player in Castle Age. They've lost most of their armies. Their composition isn't spectacular, and replacing those French knights is difficult. At this point, your only production building basically is the School of Cavalry. Maybe you have a second stable, but you don't have a juggernaut economy to spam those knights. At the same time, you do have that stable buffed by the Yorishiro for Nugify. He's up to Castle Age. He's also gotten a bunch of farms for free from his Feudal Age landmark. So I feel like he's well set up to just keep spamming these Lancers, and that's going to be troublesome to deal with for Yellow.
Yeah, well, Yellow is going to be fine himself, Wolves coming up, but the bigger issue is everyone else. I think there's a bit of a miscommunication here with these Wolves.
I was just about to say that, like, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. In general, I feel like these wars are overly ambitious. The problem is that by the time you finish these knights will pass. And the thing is, there is that principle that the longer you have, the longer wall you have, the more it takes to defend it. That wall is near impossible to defend in the long run.
Yeah, I just don't see Ayyubid getting up. I mean, there should be Mounted Samurai flooding down both flanks. In fact, they're already on the way. Meanwhile, Baltun's already led the way with his horsemen to check on what's happening. The safest walls aren't even successfully going up here. I mean, they really are between a rock and a hard place. And when you look at the state of their economies, the reality is the next player to go up in the Castle Age isn't even going to be a player from Team 2. It's going to be another one from Baltun's side.
Yeah, just a side note, Baltun opted not to go for a second town center, so... Or I just don't see it on the minimum.
No, I think that was a pivot because you had to build the outpost and fortify, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually a really smart choice. It's still a bit inefficient, the fact he's stuck with stone, but I think what he was doing is he was testing the waters to see if they're going to play greedy, and the moment he realized it was an all-in, he made the correct choice. We've all been there in team games where someone doesn't make that choice and they say, I need more TCs.
Yeah, I feel like he made the right call. His role in this one was to just buffer up the damage. He was also able to retain a lot of these horsemen. Now he's walling off his side of the map. He's on the way to Castle Age, and most importantly, he took the brunt of that attack, allowing his teammate to go up to Castle Age and start getting these Mounted Samurai in.
Mounted Samurai that are diving in. The Knights didn't even get the charge off. They do not hold a candle to the Japanese here. Horsemen sticking on top of the Lombos to waste their time. And I feel like we could just be mad as a moment away from a tap out here, right? Like, the reality is Clock Tower is now on the way. It's going to complete in 20 seconds. No one on this team is going to get a chance to tech up. All Knights have been removed from the equation, and any game where a French player is reduced to no Knights in a team setting is one where you feel like the game is already over.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those moments where you say, hey, we still have a chance to drag this out, maybe turn this around, but realistically, the position of the team on the right side is just very, very grim, because behind this, Maria hasn't really been doing a lot recently, so I expect him to get up to Castle Age very quickly. He's going to be on the King's Palace with 2 TCs. He's made a full farm transition happen, and indeed, he's going to be on the way to Castle Age in just a second. And I feel like this is the point where you're going to be facing a full Castle Age team when none of your players are in Castle. Your French player lost all their knights, and your base is still wide open despite this very long wall apparently having been completed.
Somehow, some way, the villagers did work hard for that. Tiger now looking for the tech up. The problem is it did just get scouted. So if they just send the troops in, and Maria already has the Lombos on the way, I don't see how Tiger holds this. The Javelins are heavily outnumbered here.
Yeah, especially when you have the Mounted Samurai coming in too, and there they go. Castle Age is going to hit approximately at the same time for the purple and green players, unless villagers get pushed away from this, and I love how Maria is committing to this. There's so much damage to be done on the villagers, although he's focusing the landmark itself. He's willing to lose some of his longbows here just to pick off as many villagers as he can. It's going to be a somewhat suboptimal trade in terms of army, but he's going to be more than happy with all those villager kills.
Well, the backstab worked out perfectly. That was sick from Nugify. Came around the north side with the second group of Mounted Samurai and bogged down Blue's archers. So the Lombos were never able to trade out against the squishy component here. And sure, you do get the tech up. But now, army-wise, I'm just seeing a scale point here that favors one side. Behind this, we've yet to see Baltun's next trick. He's focused on getting the walls up for the team. But what we can see in the meantime is the relic count is escalating. Nugify already has 3 banked, and I think he's got a 4th and a 5th already on the way home. Made that 6.
Yeah, he hasn't really been contested. There wasn't really much of a map presence from Yellow's team. And as a consequence, those relics were just freebies that he could collect. Maria is now up to Castle Age as well. So that leaves just 2 players in Feudal Age, both of them on the same team. That's just looking a little concerning. Well, it's actually quite a bit concerning. At least Blue does have a lot of farms to work with, and once he gets up to Castle Age, he's going to have the second town center. I just don't know if he has the time to do that.
It's a tough one as well. That these Mounted Samurai, less and less answers the minutes go on, right? They've got the level 2 ranged armor, so these Lombos can't do anything. At this stage, typically, like, Tiger doesn't want to be spamming Donzos. He really wants to be going into Sofas. And I don't rate Sofas highly here against the Mounted Samurai, right? If Knights can't carry that fight, I don't really know how Sofa are going to do it either.
In a 1v1 setting, Sofas are amazing, especially if you've been engaged in a long-ranged war. A quick pivot into Sofas can easily snowball the game because of their mobility, because of their ability to just annihilate range units. But here, you're facing superior cavalry. You have Lancers, which are great in melee, Mounted Samurai as well, and you don't really have the best of all economies to just keep spamming those Sofas.
These guys are a glutton for punishment. That raid from Baltoon was huge. I got out about 30 villages between two players, chips off several of them in the meantime. And I mean, this is just not slowing down. Like, despite their attempts to create Takeshi's Castle Labyrinth here, they haven't really protected anything. These walls aren't really stopping the knights from ever getting in.
I feel like at this point, I'm just waiting for a castle drop here from Baltoon. He's with the Chinese. He actually went for a second town center now, but he could just continue mining stone and drop a keep in the face of Tiger. Especially given that all those cattle ranches are in the front, that's actually a great way to potentially nuke his entire economy.
That's true. Some of us already being dragged down, right? A few ranches getting burned, a few cows being clubbed. But these backside raids are what just kind of worries me. The fact that between the two of them, they can't actually hold back one player at a time, right? It just shows how pitiful this is getting. Knight count has at least reboon for yellow, up to 12, but we have to remember these are just few late knights. They're at least now going to get the upgrades. Castle comes through. And credit to him, yellow made the correct choice here. Guildhall is a death sentence. He did go for the Royal Institute.
He needs to. And Royal Bloodlines is going to help quite considerably here. The question is, what kind of contribution can we expect from the other two players? Looks like they've stabilized their lines for the time being. A couple of sofas came out as well. Rams now are in the way from Maria. I feel like if you give a sufficient amount of time here for Yellow's team, there might be a way back into this.
Yeah.
But they basically need to make sure they don't take a single disappointing fight, I guess. They need to get these knights upgraded. They need to get this infantry horde upgraded as well from Blue, which first and foremost requires him to get up to Castle Age. They still need plenty of time here, and that's why I feel like an aggressive keep drop here from Baltoon could just annihilate their plans.
Yeah, I think Blue's job is to be Consuela, right? He's meant to go around and clean the house, and that means building spearmen, building lombos, playing the defensive format. You need to allow yellow to come out and start raiding, if that's still an option, and you need green to get some strong point defenses together. But your job is to keep yours and yellow's economy safe. Allow them to make moves. There's a move being made right now, but yellow, I mean, killing one nest of bees, but letting the keep go up is a big problem. They're going to be forced to commit. Baltoon is going to have to back up for the time being, but the Mount Samurai now coming in, and with the Bannerman buff, they are no joke.
Yeah, those Bannerman buffing those Mounted Samurai, those are going to be the units that decide the outcome of this fight. And don't forget, Blue's army is still a feudal age force. We also have some crossbows now moving in from Maria. Crossbows that counter essentially everything from Yellow's team, except for those longbows on the other side. But those sofas and those knights, they just get annihilated by those crossbows.
Clash coming in between the cavalry, pinch between the Grand Fulani location, which is starting to be hit up by the Rams, but I mean, you're just seeing the power of the Samurai here. It really is that deflective armor that offsets the charge of the Knights. You take the damage in return, and until you get Royal Institute, you know, you really, until you get the upgrades right, get Royal Bloodlines, you haven't really got value out of this play. And now, although it's coming through, Yellow has merely 7 Knights at its disposal.
Yeah, I feel like Baltoon's team knew fully well that Royal Bloodlines will be on the way, so they tried to take this fight before that upgrade hits. It's one of the longest, it's one of the upgrades that takes the longest time to get in Castle Age in the entire game. So even when you get up to Castle Age, you have no means of actually getting that upgrade quickly, and that's oftentimes that position of vulnerability for the French. Your opponent knows that you're going for that upgrade, they will be seeking a fight, and in this case, they were given one.
Well, the keep drop isn't as aggressive as they originally wanted, but now the Trebuchet setting up behind, you can't help but feel that Tiger is not going to get to enjoy his cows so much longer. Lombo's moving in. Village is not even reacting quickly here. Tiger's eco keeps on shrinking, and with no ranches really in mass to support him, it really is feeling like a pretty pitiful Malian game.
Yeah, at least he's got that one pit mine to the north, so he's got some passive income. And, I mean, if they ever clean this up, he's going to have a lot of cattle carcasses to work on, but at the same time, all 3 sacred sites are now under the control of Baltoon's team, so not only is Yellow's team under attack, they are now also on a time.
Push continues in, nest of bees. There's going to be a massacre if he doesn't dive on him right now. I mean, the Lombos can't even defend you anymore. Rams hitting under the primary TC. I think this is the critical ingredient that was missing, right? Like, massing cav into cav, you kind of give hope across the northern side team. But the moment you introduce these nest of bees in choke point fights, it could not get more one-sided.
Yellow's cavalry is nowhere to be found over here. Last time I checked, he was actually up at the sacred site to the north, and right now this is kind of deception. He's trying to decap that sacred site, but at the same time, those knights are much needed in this fight here as the sofas are finally breaking out.
Oh, this is sick. the wall of gates just because the armies are that fat, right? Like 3 armies on one location. We've seen what this does to people. Clumps you up too much. Great read by Baltin. And the wall crawl continues. This may be the most discount Great Wall gatehouse I've ever seen.
This is what we call trench warfare, kids.
Disappeared from 1v1, still alive in the 3v3s. Fulani soon to go down. I think, honestly, if the front TC is down, this feels over. Like, at this stage, if these Sofa die, Tiger has no way of rebooming an army.
Yeah, all 3 of his landmarks are on the front as well. So let's not forget, he could lose all 3 of his landmarks here. Town center could be gone in a second, and his feudal age landmark is just to the south of that TC. At the same time, Yellow tried to break through the enemy walls, tried to get some raids going, but unless you find a way to stop this horde, I just don't see them coming back into this game.
Nah, it kind of feels like it's already over at this stage. I mean, you're basically at 2v3 at this stage. Sure, Tiger's got some remnants of economy out in the flanks, but it's the army that's missing that they need. And yes, Deniskia did find their way up into Castle Age, but the army size is just getting out of control here. I mean, Baltin alone, I feel like he could 2v1, 3v1 maybe even.
Yeah, he's got Nest of Beasts, he's got Springboards as well preemptively, so he's got anti-siege. In fact, he's already sniping out that Mangle on the back line. Just makes it near impossible for this English army to stand and fight, but here come the Knights. Last hurrah potentially from Yellow.
Into Spears, probably not the best way to begin. Mad Samurai going to dive deep here. Sofa trying to flank around the side, but Baltoon, just too many Britneys in the formation. Enough spears to hold back both flanks. Nestabees massacre down the center. And that should be enough for them to be convinced that game 1 is going to be going the way of Baltoon, Nugify, and Maria.
Yellow's team tried to play this one super aggressively, as we do have the GGs coming in. They went triple team on the front player, battering rams, longbows, and knights as well. But they were unable to get any value for that. And, you know, there's always that principle that if you invest into army, you have to find value for it. If you don't, your opponent will just outboom you and snowball the game. That's kind of what we had there. By the time that push became a reality, Baltoon was fortified, you had a Castle Age player in Nugify, and really that ramp push didn't do much. And once that collapsed, they just found themselves stuck in Feudal Age, eventually getting snowballed by fully boomed players. It's a pretty common thing in team games, I must say. One team playing very aggressively. If it works out, you're going to win the game in less than 15 minutes. But if it's not, it's extremely difficult to recover from a failed Feudal Age push.
Well, we'll see if they can recover in this series. Best of 3, folks. So at least one more hope for Deniskia, Tiger, and Yellow. But right now, Baltimore and Nugify looking